Hi everyone. I'm excited to be here today to talk to you about some of the miracle stories that are happening right here in our own city, in our own state, every day. My name is Tony Kausha, and the title of our show is Tony's 50,000 Coincidence Miracles. Please note, this show is not about religion, and we're not trying to change anyone's religion, and we're not trying to get you to join any religion. It's just about miracle stories. I don't know of any religion on the planet that doesn't talk about miracles. That's why religions begin, because they have something that's telling them there's really a God. But we're not going to get into that. We're going to just talk about miracles and leave the decisions about all that up to you. So we don't care what religion you are. We just want to talk about miracles. If you are an atheist, I think you'll enjoy the program as well, although I can't guarantee you'll remain an atheist very long after you hear many convincing stories, coincidence kinds of stories about miracles. You can email me your own stories if you wish. We'll try to use all we can on the show. I can't guarantee we will, depending on volume and time, but you're welcome to send your stories on to us, and we will mention them when we can. You can send them to the following email address. But please notice that if we do use your story, we won't mention your name. We'll keep you anonymous. And we suggest that in your story, when you send it to us, don't use your correct name. That way anyone listening will not be able to figure out that it was you that sent the story in. The email address you can send your stories to is very easy to remember. It consists of 2 words and 3 numbers. The first word is Tony, spelled Tony, and the second word is and, spelled AND, and the numbers are 777. So once again, the name is Tony and 777 at AOL.com. Well, let us begin. A first coincidence miracle today is from someone who was at a car dealership getting their car serviced, and in the process somehow they got on a discussion with some other people waiting for their car to be serviced, and they were telling them about our 2 books and our radio show, and apparently none of them had heard about it before, and they were explaining that. And while they were telling them about the fact that we stress on our show and the books stress that God speaks to each person within our hearts, our minds, and our souls, while they were doing that, the PA system began to play a song. The words were, "Who needs a heart when a heart can be broken?" So they're relating to us that while they were talking about our show and our books, about how God speaks to us in our hearts and souls and minds, while they were doing that, the PA system begins to play the song, "Who needs a heart when a heart can be broken?" So it's a coincidence miracle of sorts. Certainly the person speaking noticed it, and I would notice it too if I were there. So it's a good indicator of when you're trying to do something for God, you're trying to tell people about God, God shows up in many ways. In this particular case, he showed up on the PA system confirming that God speaks to us in our hearts. I was inspired to go to the beach one summer weekend and to pass out cards along the beach. This was early in the season where the college students now were out for the summer, and in the first week or so of when that happens, lots of students go to the beach together because they're going to be traveling back home for the summer months, and so before they take off to go back home, they typically spend time at the beach. And so I was passing out cards, and I distributed some cards about our book and our radio show and our website to about 4 groups of 8 to 10 college students each. I remember it was a very impressive to me because there was a certain area of the beach where it was packed with college students. They had assembled as friends. They were in groups of 8 to 10. Some of the groups did know each other, and some of them did not know each other. And I wound up, while I was passing out cards, to introduce some of them to each other. And in that case, a couple of groups, like 8 members plus 10 members, they got all together, became 18 members all of a sudden, because I had evangelized and told 4 groups the stories about our show and our books, and they really were so impressed. I was so delighted. I know this may sound unbelievable, but they really asked a lot of questions. I spent like 10 minutes with each group answering their questions. And at that point, they were so excited about, they welcomed the card. They tell me they're going to go on the website. They're going to buy the book. They were so impressed with the fact that somebody could tell them in simple terms, there is a God, and he talks to us all day long. I mean, that's my message to everybody on the planet. I've been working at this for like 56 years now, and one thing I'm positive, and I tell everybody I can, God wants to talk to every single person every day. He wants us to be his friend and have conversations with every single person on the planet, 7 billion people. And I have a lot of proof, a lot of evidence. So I told them that. They were so excited. And one of the things that came up, they asked a lot of questions. So one of my answers that seemed to resound with all of them, and they loved the story, is in the Garden of Eden, there's a tree of knowledge. And God said to Adam and Eve, do whatever you want. They were his friends. He said, do whatever you want. There's the Garden of Eden. They were friends of God. God spoke to them every day. It says in the Bible he would walk with them and talk with them every day in the garden. So they were close, personal friends. So they had God as a friend they could talk to him anytime they wanted. And he said, do whatever you want, but don't eat of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Now that's very important. Again, let me say, God said, do whatever you want, but don't eat of the tree of knowledge. And the reason is, and I tell people when they ask me, why did God do that? Why did he say? Doesn't he want people to have knowledge? Doesn't God want people to have knowledge? Well, I asked God that question one day, and he inspired me with the following answer. He inspired me and said, Tony, I was their personal friend. I am the personal friend of every human being. Every person on the planet was created by me to be my friend. So I need the whole world to know that. Everybody, every human being is my friend because I made them to be my friend. And since we are friends and they can talk to me, they have me, God, the source of all wisdom. They don't need to eat of the tree of knowledge. They don't have to eat and get knowledge from some other source. They can just talk to me. For example, I would tell them in a book, just read chapter 10 or just read page 275. I would tell them that because I know all things, and that's all they need to read in that book. I wouldn't tell them to read the whole book because I'm the source of wisdom, and I know in that book what page or chapter they need to read. They may not need to read the whole book. So that's why I said don't eat of the tree of knowledge. So it should be a clear sign to everybody on the planet. They don't need knowledge if they have me as their friend, the source of all wisdom. Our next sharing is from a woman who tells us her husband, who's in his 90s, was out walking in the forest, and he tripped and fell, and he didn't realize it until he got back home, but he lost his full set of keys, and it was important that she find them because there were a couple of keys on his ring that she didn't have. So she went out the next day, like 24 hours later, hoping and praying that she'd be able to find them. He told her where he fell, so she found that spot. She searched for quite a while, didn't see any clues of the keys. There were a lot of leaves on the ground. So she said a prayer, asked Jesus to inspire her, and she was inspired to look off the beaten path, a distance off the beaten path, and she did. She went and she brushed some leaves away, just on instinct, following the inspiration she got, and sure enough, she found the keys. And apparently she tells us that either a bird or an animal had moved them off the path where her husband had fallen down, because she found the spot where he fell, and these keys were quite a distance away from that. So something or someone had moved them, and they were under a pile of leaves, and we would suppose that maybe God himself sent an angel to move them because somehow he directed this woman directly to the exact spot. Our next coincidence miracle is from the same woman who told us the story about her husband losing the keys. She tells us about an earlier case several years earlier where her father was in a convalescent home and had a couple of close friends there, friends of his at the convalescent home. And one day when they were there all together, her father promised her that at the internment service at his funeral, he promised that a red-tailed black hawk bird would show up at the interment as a clue and as a sign that he was okay and that he had gotten to heaven. And sure enough, she tells us she was at the interment, and a red-tailed black hawk bird showed up and brought tears to her eyes and excitement to her heart. So it is possible for people to foretell things like this when they are being inspired by God, of course. And this is a great story of someone telling us that it really happened to them through their father, saying that he would have that happen, and it did happen. Our next story is from a woman immigrant who was brutalized and divorced and abandoned by her husband and kept from seeing her daughter for 3 years. She got COVID and was in the hospital and almost died. She asked God for help. She had no hope. There was no one to turn to. She was alone. She asked God for help, and she did survive. She wound up getting her daughter back. She got a great job. She got a car. She got a wonderful home now. Apparently she had been well educated and got a good job. And she stresses how her mother, when she was a young girl, her mother had always stressed to her to never give up on trusting God. Again, never to give up on trusting God. And that's the only thing that pulled her through and got her to get her daughter back and finalize the divorce with her husband and wound up securing a great job and a great home in the process. So it's a wonderful story, a wonderful true story, and it tells us never give up on trusting God because God can do anything he wants to do. Our next coincidence miracle is something that happened to me. I was inspired one day to go to a park. I frequent a park where I do some exercises and I walk and I pray while I'm walking. So I went there. I typically go there maybe 4 times a week on average. And while I was praying and walking and talking to God about things in my life, I noticed at a distance a woman was exercising, and I was inspired to walk over there, hand her a card about our book and our radio show and our website. The card tells them everything they need to know. To just walk by and hand them a card. And I was inspired to do that, but I was inspired to do that only if she looked in my direction and she waved. That was the clue. So I asked God to give me a clue that that's what he wanted me to do, and that's okay. You can ask God to give you clues, inspirations when you're wondering if he's telling you to do something or if you're just imagining it. So I asked him how I would know, and I got inspired. If she waved at me and looked in my direction, that would be the clue. And immediately, as I got that inspiration, like a split second later, she happens to look up, and she looks in my direction and she waves, and that was the clue. So I walked over, I gave her a card. She asked a lot of questions about it. She was delighted to hear about, we wrote 2 books about miracles, coincidence miracles, in our weekly radio show. So it was a great moment for me. It was a great moment because God had blessed me. He inspired me that if she looked in my direction and waved, I should give her a card, and it turned out to be splendid. She was very interested in hearing about coincidence miracles. So let me tell you our website again. Our website is WCATradio.com/miracles/. One more time now, WCATradio.com/miracles/. God bless you all. I'll talk to you next week.